Welcome everyone to the CU Boulder Ombuds Presents session, Staying in Conversation About Racism, part 6 of 6. We'll get started in just a few seconds. Give you a chance to log on.
Okay, welcome everyone. This is the last episode of Staying in Conversation About Racism. The topic for today is acting with integrity. So pleased to be here again with Donna Mejia. And I'm going to cover a few of our technical pieces. So my name is Kirsi Aulin. I'm the director of the Ombuds office here at CU Boulder. If you have not joined us for these webinars before, you'll notice that you are, your video is turned off and you're muted. It's to preserve bandwidth. We do ask that you open your chat box. You will find it by hovering over the bottom of your window, and the chat option will pop up. Please click that and keep it open during the presentation so that you can see participation and remarks made by your colleagues, as well as be able to chat information as we ask you to respond to various questions during our presentation. So welcome everyone. We're so glad to be here again for our last iteration of this series. If you are interested in this topic and would like to watch the other presentations, we have videos posted on the Ombuds office Lunch and Learn website page, as well as our website page on Standing Against Racism. To start, always like to remind ourselves that the University of Colorado operates on Native land associated with the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations.
There are 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to what makes up the state of Colorado. And I would like to take this moment to offer tribute to my own tribes, the Mississippi Choctaw and the Alabama Coushatta, Mitakuye Oyasin, all my relations.
We also like to start with a pledge. This may be familiar to you from our previous episode. Our pledge to you is that we will be encouraging and humorous in our offerings. We will explain thoughtfully and clearly. We will offer citation for what we have learned and concede openly what we have not yet learned. We will ensure a welcoming, judgment-free, and inviting environment where counterpoint ideas can be exchanged diplomatically. Our discussion will welcome new ideas and perspectives, and we will remain receptive to these concepts changing and transforming. Please let us know if you perceive glaring holes in our research. We intend to give you tools to increase your conversancy, expand your boundaries, and nurture your independence. We have no interest in telling you what to think. Rather, we are passionate about helping you ask better questions so the world can reveal its many self-evident truths to you without interference from socially indoctrinated filters. We will respect our differences in and out of this particular classroom. Your dignity and comfort are important to us, and in return, we ask for your courage, diplomacy, open thinking, and active involvement. We will hold ourselves accountable to the same caliber and standards that we are requesting of you.
This is the pledge from my syllabus and all of my courses. And we also wanted to say thank you to all of you who have joined us in this series, because so many of you have reached out about this pledge. And I want to give a special shout out to faculty member Mike Barnett in the College of Music. Thank you very much for sharing the pledge that you created based on this one. Yes, we should all be communicating good intentions to all of our students so they know exactly where we stand in our allyship and our ability to support them. I also want to thank all of you who have made comments about the artwork and the slides. We took a special approach to today's workshop. We wanted to get the art of the people and bring you some of the best protest signs from the Black Lives Matter movement. So we hope you enjoy the artwork on today's slides. I'm going to start with the concept of taking action and understanding what toxic neutrality is. Toxic neutrality is feeling like, well, I can't do anything, so I'm not going to try, a sense of paralysis. And throughout this series, we've tried to prevent you from going into that place by giving you many, many, many tools to understand there is always something that can be done to stand against racism. You are never powerless. So toxic neutrality is complicit in its perpetuation of harm. That silence is rarely effective as a tool, and it actually, again, perpetuates harm. And inaction perpetuates inequity. So really the ability to combat racism in our society, in our structures, in our families, in our homes, in our workplaces, in our educational systems, depends on everyone taking responsibility for being a change maker. I love what Will Smith said when he said, racism is not getting worse, it's getting filmed. Where would we be if we didn't have evidence of what people of color have been experiencing for over 400 years on this continent? So let's go ahead and know that toxic neutrality is not a strategy for action. It is interference with action.
Hand in hand with toxic neutrality is toxic silence. We have a quote here from Elie Wiesel, who received the Nobel Prize, Peace Prize. He was a survivor of the Holocaust. And to put things today into context, I think it's helpful to think back to that time and all the people who were silent and complicit in the actions of the Nazi regime in Germany. So Wiesel says, silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant.
Dr. Martin Luther King said the same thing, that when it comes to the well-being of any individual or any life form, that we have a responsibility and a stewardship role to play in intervening and letting go of titles, letting go of structures and systems that are perpetuating harm and making a stand.
One mechanism that we want to comment on is dehumanization. You know, a lot has been written about dehumanization. It is, and this definition is actually from Wikipedia, it is a mechanism, a technique that is used in the incitement to genocide, for example. This is a very serious aspect of human culture that can be used to justify war. Slavery has been justified in this manner as well. So we'd like you to think a little bit about this and chat to us. I'm going to read you a little bit of a situation and we'd like you to chat to us. If you watched the video of George Floyd's murder by a police officer, what was the first thing that came to mind as you saw the offending officer and the other officers who stood by and watched? So please put that, your reaction, in the chat box. what was your reaction to the officers who stood by and watched George Floyd being murdered? We have shocked and appalled in all caps. Police must be abolished. Why don't they do anything to stop this? They looked afraid. Horror at the casual way they took the life of another person. Pure outrage. I can't believe that those other officers are not intervening. They are in the power position. The bystanders are not. Horror. They didn't look afraid. They were complicit. Why isn't someone stepping in to stop this? Incomprehensible. Nazi Germany and the many, quote, good Germans not saying anything when they saw such injustice. Horrified and outrage and grief. The officers treated George Floyd in the same way we treat factory farmed animals. Okay. Think lynching is another response. So thank you so much for your chats. We really want to get at this piece about, what happens with the bystanders. All acts of cruelty in history have had bystanders. And how can we shift from being passive bystanders to taking action that might make the situation better? I had the privilege of studying with Maryse Condé, who is considered sort of the matriarch of Caribbean literature. She writes in French and Caribbean Creole. And one of the things that she had us do in a course that I took was to look at some of the source documents for racism and when did things change and people began to dehumanize Black people. It was very interesting to look at some of the earliest writings of contact between the quote unquote explorers and native populations, both in the Americas and in Africa, because the initial descriptions are glowing. These people are beautiful, they're very healthy, they're welcoming and so on. And when there was a decision among particularly Portugal and there's a comment to say prefer the term colonizer. I agree. The very first people who had contact were not necessarily part of that colonizer group, so that's why I use the term explorer. But that shifted when there was a decision made to enslave Native people in the Americas as well as the Native people in Africa, and the terminology and the descriptions became dehumanizing. And that shift in language and conception of other people, and to me, that's the shift into colonizing, was a way of justifying exploitation, the stealing of land, the stealing of people, the stealing of resources, and the brutal treatment that was visited upon these folks. So we don't take this dehumanization lightly, even though it seems like it's just language, quote unquote. A language starts a slippery slope that leads to potentially very brutal behaviors.
There are many, excuse me, there are many current institutions that cultivate a willingness to harm others without providing equal counterbalance and emphasis on the cultivation of restraint or development of personal character and personal evolution. And so when these institutions create new humans who are willing to harm each other, who are willing to think of another as less than human, this is when we need to create channels of accountability. And that's very much what the Black Lives Matter movement is attempting to do. Really, the propagation of these ideas is old, but usually the first core strategy is dehumanization. So the denial of another's worth. whether it be a human or, you're correct, another animal form, any other life form. There has been also some interesting dialogue around, well, what is racism at the heart of it? And I wanted to clarify, if we could, maybe just hit the pause button on action items and clarify an understanding that racism refers to something that is historically referred to as people dehumanizing another member of the human race. However, we now also have what we think of as cultural racism, which has the same social impact as racism, the original racism, the dehumanization. Cultural racism refers to the practice of thinking that our cultures are so different that there is absolutely no way that we could surmount these differences and find common ground. So they won't say necessarily that someone is inferior. They will say, oh, the differences are just way too wide. There's just no way to find peace. There's no way we can get along. And so this term racism also refers to the practice of cultural racism, and they're getting blurred a little bit in the media. And so I just wanted to tease out the difference between racism, cultural racism. Racism, we have to acknowledge in social sciences that there is one human race, right? And so to refer to each of us as different races is actually a misnomer. We are different ethnicities, including all the ethnicities that make up what it has become the construct of whiteness. So to historically clarify, yes, there is cultural racism and there is biological racism. We're talking about both in this presentation under the mantle of racism. We are standing on the shoulders of many, many, many who have resisted. And so we wanted to, in offering actionable items, I feel one of the best things that you can do is to actually go back and read the voices, words, thoughts, and contributions of some of our earliest anti-racism activists, scholars, and elders. This is a beginner list of a starting place if you'd like to know more. So Sojourner Truth, matter of fact, we're gonna post in the chat right now a video of Sojourner Truth's speech, Ain't I a Woman? Hope you find it absolutely thrilling. Please bookmark it and save it for viewing after we finish this presentation. It's just mountains of truth that are waterproof and bulletproof in what is being said. But scholars like Ida B. Wells, quoted here on the page, Bantu Stephen Biko and Nelson Mandela of South Africa, Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, Paulo Freire, who wrote Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Bell Hooks, who has written incredible books about challenging racism and educational theory, Edward Said, who wrote about Orientalism, James Baldwin, Zora Neale Hurston, Angela Davis, Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington. These are the shoulders upon which our current movement is founded. We really, really don't want those voices to be invisibilized or their efforts in vain. We encourage you as a first point of action to go learn from these historic voices.
So if you have been with us for our previous webinars, this chart should look familiar. This is from Deepa Iyer, and it's a way of mapping out our roles in a social change ecosystem. So the last webinar we did, we asked you to identify which role was your preferred role in this ecosystem. And we had a really nice distribution, actually. It really demonstrated how people have varying abilities and interests and ways that they can engage successfully. So this time we'd like you to describe in the chat an action you are planning based on your primary identification in the social change framework. So again, in the chat box, what action are you planning based on your primary identification in this system, in this framework.
As responses are rolling in, I think it's important to understand that actions can be on a small scale, on a larger scale, on a structural scale. But even the individual action of, I'm going to check on a neighbor, I'm going to reach out to a family member, I am going to offer resources that I'm aware of to a teacher, I am going to donate to causes that are supporting things I believe in. I am going to not be a bystander.
So we have some responses coming in. Build an organization that inspires vision and promotes healing. Ongoing donations to Black political organizations to build power and structures for change. As an experimenter, I am working towards promoting opportunities for graduate students in our department to learn about anti-racism and to find their voices. Care for people in my community. Taking the Inclusive Communities of Practice course via CU. Building and delivering an anti-Black curriculum to have courageous conversations with Latinx and Indigenous communities. The poetry group I direct meets once a month, and we have just done a Black Lives Matter discussion. Next, we'll be doing a Harlem Renaissance discussion. Working as a volunteer with Community Support Org for families that are struggling. Developing and teaching an anti-racism curriculum for first-year students. Treating each person I meet, interact with as equal to me, no matter who that person is. Seeking a PhD in law and public policy to become a policy creator.
Woo!
Yeah. Continue working within my office to provide anti-racism resources and encourage small group discussions. Start with self and talk to loved ones while they say racist BS. That might be the hardest thing of all. Hats off. Integrating anti-racism into our lab expectations document. Yeah. These are all wonderful, wonderful actions.
Thank you very much for sharing what you're up to, because the biggest thing is we're aware of that there's a moment of importance occurring right now in our country's history. However, how do we sustain this moment? How do we make meaningful action pivot forward?
Yeah. I have a couple more comments that came in. I believe I am an experimenter. I'm unsure of my path forward to become an ally and anti-racist, so I'm taking classes, reading Black authors, and I'm doing my best to fumble forward. Thank you for using Donna's term. I think that's beautiful. I have engaged in very careful, tentative discussions with my husband about what is and isn't racist. I have been a member of the Inclusive Communities of Practice since last fall. Wonderful. Keep donating to social justice orgs, sharing these resources to friends, family, and students, rewriting my courses, sharing storytelling with all communities, protesting with my kids. Beautiful actions. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. And, oops, can we go back? Yes, thank you. So I find this sign just incredibly poignant. This is the big question that I've been hearing from so many friends. Where will the white community be once this is no longer an item in the news? Will we have the same response that we've had before, which is as soon as the TV cameras move on, people move on, and they do not stay in for the long haul. And, you know, this is really part of the reason why today we're making an emphasis on action. And as Donna mentioned, you know, small steps are action. And it is more important to stay in it for the long term than to make a big splash in the short term.
We need all action to actually move the needle on the dial. And so I'd like to talk about another point of action you can take: restorative education and research practices. Restorative education really aims to fill the gaps of information that were edited out through the hegemonic practices of white power groups and power structures. So it's a systemic effort to dominate others through education and undermine their humanity. And so educational restoration means going back and looking at what narrative has produced this current reality. And if we look at, for example, students that come into my 101 classes as freshmen, we know that there are many world empires that were not studied. For example, they've only studied the Roman Empire. They've not talked about the Ottoman, the Malian, the Mesopotamian, or Aztec empires. And so many times I have to go back and do some restorative education before I can talk more fully about what's happening now. Many of my current students do not understand that there are contemporary governmental aggressions against First Nation and Indigenous peoples. They think that all the treaty breaking happened back in, 400 years ago. And it's like, no, treaties are still being broken. One of my first visits with the Wampanoag tribe in Massachusetts revealed to me, and this was during the Clinton presidency, that the Wampanoag tribe had to give up their mineral and water rights on tribal lands in order to be acknowledged as a tribe by the United States government. They were the first tribe of contact that were officially reached when the English settlers came to Plymouth, what would later be known as Plymouth. They landed on Wampanoag territory, but Wampanoag were not acknowledged as First Nation tribes until they gave up their mineral and water rights to the US government under the Clinton administration. This is not an antiquated issue, it is a contemporary issue. There are many historical examples that can be included in our current discussions that are absolutely inspiring. Kirsi, why don't I let you explain what you know about Queen Nzinga?
Yeah, she's a queen that is much revered throughout Western Africa. And I come to know about her through my husband, who is from West Africa. And she was really fierce. And the Portuguese were engaging in slave trade on her land, as well as trying to colonize it. And she successfully thwarted that effort, stopping the slave trade, attacking slave convoys, as well as got the Portuguese to leave. So she is widely celebrated as an example of African resilience and self-efficacy and dignity.
Many people don't know the very problematic origins of some of our current fields of study. For example, I was exposed to the understanding that the beginnings of anthropology as a field of study were for over 20 years really ethnoerotica, the study of women's bodies and sexuality practices and marriage practices from around the world. And there was even a study in the early 1900s that purported itself to be official science, where it just simply studied the ratio of breast to vulva on women of different ethnicities, claiming that the white woman was the the pure model of beauty, and all other ethnic women had absolutely no comparison to the ratios of a white ectomorph. And so really, these are the kind of things that have been seeded in our educational system and lead to the kind of implicit bias that still exists and the kind of misunderstandings and distortions that make it hard for us to have truly honest exchanges and conversations. There's another example I'd like to give from the field of archaeology. There was an architectural relief on a Mesopotamian and Greek statue that had a woman holding up a disc, and the the archaeologist who discovered the relief and wrote about it said, "This is a picture of a woman serving cake." And it took a female archaeologist 20 years later reviewing that study to say, that's not cake, that's a drum. This is an example of women holding the importance of being spiritual guides for the community by being musicians and singers and leading public ceremony. This is not a woman serving cake, this is a woman drumming in a public ritual. And so those kinds of reinterpretations of old data by looking through it with eyes that have been informed by critical race theory, by feminism, by new modes of thinking that are much more inclusive of many scholarly voices and perspectives and vantage points.
So we do want to talk a little bit about First Amendment rights, because there is a misconception really that the First Amendment allows us to say anything in any space. And that's just not true. The First Amendment protects us from being arrested by our own government, but it does not offer exemption from consequences of hate speech, for example, in educational work and other kinds of public settings. So there are societal limits if you're in a public, if you're on private property, for example, a grocery store, you have to abide by the rules and regs that are set up by that organization. And I was very encouraged to see in February that our campus made a statement about the kinds of incidences that were happening in classrooms. We have had a rash of students believing that their opinions are equally valid and carry as much weight as the scholarship of a faculty member, and being very vocal in classroom settings denouncing faculty members. And this has been particularly directed at faculty of color and also women who are minoritized in their fields. And so there is a statement that was put out by the Vice Provost of Faculty Affairs and the Provost, and it includes this statement. CU Boulder thus encourages discussion of minority and unpopular viewpoints. The key is that in the classroom and other education spaces, these viewpoints and truth claims need to be relevant to the subject and to course topics, and they need to emerge from relevant disciplinary standards for research, inquiry, and analysis. So I think this is, a way to set the stage for making sure that people understand that being disruptive in a classroom and challenging a faculty member's scholarship just because you don't have that same view, it does not mean that that's a grounds for a robust academic discussion. Now, Donna and I spoke about this statement, and we do recognize that there's a potential for this being used against people who are raising concerns around racism. However, that's not the intention of the university, and I do hope that this is helpful to faculty of color as they have been challenged in unproductive and unprofessional and inappropriate ways in the classroom. Did you want to add anything to this, Donna?
I would, thank you. I myself have had my own knowledge of my industry challenged by students, and I've had students actually migrate away from the department because they didn't want to have to take my class as part of their requirement. So what I would like to say is the problem with using only research and only empirical information to drive a conversation is the experiences of people of color have not been the subject of much academic study up to this point in history, except by people of color themselves. And so what's important to recognize is being able to be inclusive in the classroom or in our workspaces or in our meetings as teams or in the services we provide to students. There is a space to welcome personal perspective. And then there is a time to reconcile with ongoing research. And it must be a co-balancing effort that goes back and forth continually if we're all to learn to change the narrative, but as well to stay on track with keeping educational spaces safe.
Thanks, Donna.
Yes, thank you.
So here are some things that people can do. So actions, as we were talking about it before. We do want to acknowledge that taking action is a process. If you're starting in this realm, you need to expect that you will make mistakes and that you will upset people at times. You need to be open to feedback when you've done that. But also to encourage that, you know, growth is really lifelong in general. And so growth in this area also will be lifelong. You'll never arrive. It's always a practice that you do. So here's a list here of things that are, you know, suggestions of things that can be done. I want to offer an example of something that's being done in the University of Colorado system. So I'm aware that Staff Council, which is a group that any staff member can be part of, has been playing a huge advocacy role in this, as well as CUSG. And that is working to disengage the CU's furniture purchases from the Department of Corrections. This issue has now been raised with the regents. And, you know, hats off for these folks for working in the trenches to raise this issue as a concern for the whole system.
We also know that there is a wonderful new organization called diversifycunow.com that you can log on to. And they are organizing Regent Watch parties because the Board of Regents has demonstrated, some members have demonstrated an unwillingness to listen to the majority opinions of campuses in making decisions. And so it's in order to be much more watchful of what our leaders and our regents are up to, we encourage you to join the Regent Watch parties for their meetings that are being broadcast by diversifycunow.com. But there are many things that we can do to combat racism. When we first started this series, the link from which we grabbed many of these ideas just gave 50. They are now up to 100 actionable items that you can engage in to combat racism. So just some of these examples: support Black and Brown owned businesses, arrange for interactive cultural exchanges and international exchanges in the spaces that you manage on this campus. curate a diverse set of friends for yourself and your children. How much racism was in play when you think about an incident? Be willing to include the question of racism in the formula. Support voter rights. Look up the White Ally Toolkit, which has amazing resources for understanding what you can do and what actionable items are accessible to you no matter where you are in the social ecosphere. But if you have an idea, see if someone's already doing it. You may not have to reinvent the wheel. There are tremendous resources flooding our communities right now. See if you can take your cues from people of color on what some of those actions are instead of feeling like you have to design it from scratch. Believe me, many of us have been at it for a very long time. But more than anything, no matter who you are in this social change ecosystem, continue to be teachable, continue to be open to learning.
So these are some wonderful resources from the Southern Poverty Law Center. They're the oldest organization in the United States tracking hate crimes and hate groups. I've been a supporter for decades, and I find that their information is extremely timely. Specific to Colorado, unfortunately, there was a report that they sent out about a year ago saying that hate incidents in Colorado and the activity of hate groups have tripled since 2016. And we currently have 22 hate groups operating in Colorado. If you look at the map on the right, it shows how Colorado compares to other states, and you can see we're not faring so well. And so, you know, there's a lot that can be done in terms of local action within our state. Currently, nationally, there are 66 active lawsuits addressing hate and extremism, children's rights, immigrant justice, LGBTQ rights, economic justice, criminal justice reform, and voting rights. You can see on the left, there's, this is an interactive map that they publish, but it's, this is a little copy of it. But the, 1,700 plus monuments honoring the Confederacy and where they're located in the United States, and that we have 940 hate groups active in the United States. When you look at the Southern Poverty Law Center materials, it is very difficult to stay ignorant about what's really going on in our country.
And even thinking about what's happening on our campus, I just wanted to share with you that, we have some 30,000 people engaged in being educated on the CU Boulder campus. There are, I believe, around 3,000, 4,000 faculty members. And out of the 3,000 to 4,000 faculty members that we have on campus, there are only 19 Black female faculty members. 19, not even 20, out of over 3,000. So allyship, yes, is important to us. Allyship means something to me personally, to know that I am not alone in feeling the demographic overwhelm of trying to do work at CU Boulder. And in that, we wanted to make sure that in this series, we ask you as an actionable item to actually go to the Black Lives Matter webpage. It is an incredible resource of what's happening worldwide, because this is now an issue that has been taken up around the world. They have information on local chapters. They have information on action items. You can donate. Leaders making posts, blog posts on the site, wonderful articles. It is a fantastic resource for action items. So please do go to the Black Lives Matter webpage.
Donna, I need to say that we are at 45 minutes, so
Yep.
we probably need to pick up the pace.
This is something we wanted to share with you. In thinking about seeking feedback, if you are considering yourself an ally and remaining flexible in your response to situations. There is a study that was just published that was centered around 7 questions for white allies about their perception of their work versus the perceptions of people who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color that they work with. So looking at the disparity in perceptions. So we wanted to give you this website. It will be included in your resource page that you receive after this webinar to look at being teachable, staying open to feedback and where there may be differences and disparities in perceptions. And we also wanted to share with you the inspiration of allyship. Because if you look at your screen, you'll see all of the cities around the world in which there were substantially massive Black Lives Matter movement protests. Milan, Frankfurt, Spain, London, Paris, Rome, Busan, Tokyo. So this is now a shared commonality. We are waking up as global citizens. Forgive me, I'm gonna take a minute and rewind because you notice down at the bottom of your screen in the center, the city of Kaframbel. Do you know where Kaframbel is? Syria. These folks are in a war zone supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. So what's your excuse?
So Donna, I'm thinking maybe we skip the chat on this slide because of time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The most important thing is refusing to be a bystander. Humanize whoever is being targeted, shift the power dynamic in whatever way you can, and return us to a sense of humanity. Build networks of care and accountability. What do we mean by this? It means that part of what you can do in an action item is figure out how your community can respond when disruption based on racism occurs. Do you have an incident response plan? Kirsi, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I want to say that having a plan in advance of something happening is extremely prudent and really important. It means that if there is an incident, and we've experienced incidents on our campus, in your department, having a plan in advance means that you can put it into action in no time at all. Everyone knows that something is going to be done and there will be a response. That really helps. Trying to put together a plan while things are moving along is ineffective, it is slow, it's chaotic, and you don't get a chance to really think it through carefully. If you have a plan in advance, it means that you can have people contribute to a plan of action really thoughtfully, take their time, and then you can move straight to action once something happens.
Networks of care. That means also including care for folks who have been targeted when an incident occurs in your community, making sure that we understand who's doing the meal chain, who is calling to check on someone, have their loved ones been contacted, are they networked into support services? How can you be helpful and take care of friends and fellows who have been impacted by racism? I wanted to note that there on your screen, I added at the last minute a resource that was just brought to my attention called Black Lives Action. And on that page, they have over 100 points of how you can build accountability in your own communities around racism. You can communicate your inclusive and anti-racist priorities in everything that you do by making sure you talk to the regents, the deans, the chancellor, the provost, faculty council, student council, resident advisors, research groups, guest speakers to the campus, co-workers, collaborators, employees, community partners, donors, alumni groups, contractors, and local and statewide electeds. Really, the point is not to be silent about your priorities, but to say, this is important to me. It will be a central theme in what we are about to embark on. And by communicating your priorities, you're helping to elevate the issue and centralize anti-racism in everything that you do. If you're scared to do that, may I offer this quote from Nipsey Hussle? If you look at the people in your circle and you don't get inspired, you don't have a circle, you have a cage. Think about action as freeing you rather than necessarily creating more disruption in your life. Social media is a frequent action item for people, and it can be disruptive, harmful, create more harm, or just be an arena for people to act out on each other. But there is one upside of social media in all of this. In the past, scholars spoke on behalf of people in the history books. And many times it was white scholars narrating the experiences of people of color in the history books. Social media has allowed people of color to self-publish their own story. And so their experiences become the central narrative and the primary source material for what we are studying and what we are experiencing. So continue to self-publish important perspectives, share what you are experiencing so that we become the voice of the people as we go forward rather than the voice of interpreters. Develop, evolve perpetually, laugh, cry, heal, nourish, and know your rights. We wanted to point to the central photo here of Black protesters forming a human chain to prevent a store from being looted, and really trying to make sure that we always bring our best selves into every effort that we make.
So we know that some of you may need to leave soon, but we would like to do a little practice. So what we're going to ask you to do is get into the chat and take a look at this scenario. What would you do? So whenever your BIPOC colleague speaks up in team meetings, you notice that people don't really listen to what she has to say and move quickly to only discuss what other people are saying. What could you do in that situation?
Kirsi and Donna, this is Liz.
Yes.
While folks are thinking about that and responding in the chat, I just want to bring to your attention a couple of questions that showed up in the chat earlier. One person was asking if you have examples of a plan. I don't know if that's something you're going to include in your follow-up later. And another question was, are there people on campus that can help develop said plan?
Yes.
I was going to say, do you want to take that, Donna? Because your department does have one.
The dance department does have a safety net and incident response protocol that we follow so that we are attending to anyone who has been subjected to an act, and we deal as a community with perpetrators. We report as well because we believe in personal accountability. So we will report ourselves if we are involved in an incident, and we remain in open conversation. We'd be happy to talk to you as a department, find a department representative that can share with you how we proceed in taking care of cultivating a sense of community. And also, are there people that would be willing to help? I would like to confidently say yes. I'm personally willing to consult if time is available. And I know there are other scholars and activists on the campus that are very, very interested in policy change as well as practice changes in our community. Do I have a list? No, I don't want to volunteer anyone without having spoken with them first, but I will say that we are here, and it means networking, it means getting involved to find out who those change makers are.
Okay, we have some responses to the chat. Oops. Now we're getting a lot more. So trying to find the spot here. So one person says, say, I'd like to hear from her, please. Use my voice to ask that colleague to repeat what she said. Respond verbally myself. Hey, that's a good idea. Let's talk about it. Speak up and call attention to her, applaud her, ask her to be heard, stand while she is speaking. Redirect conversation back to amplify BIPOC colleague's position by asking that colleague a question about a point. Yeah, that's nice. That's really subtle. Can you share that link? Oh, sorry, that's a question. Then we have talk to my Black colleague. Tell her I noticed this and don't think it's okay. Tell her I'm thinking about talking to the director about it and ask if that would be welcome, depending on the culture just pointed out in the moment. Yeah. So participate in the meeting with a comment such as, I found so-and-so's comment point interesting and would like to ask a question about it, hear more about it, have some discussion about it. Great. Disrupt the away movement of the discussion and return the discussion to her with a respectful, may we come back to that person, what that person was saying, and then course correct the conversation back to the topic they were speaking about, right? You can say something like, I'd like to go back to the comments made by the colleague. I don't think we focus enough on her information. Yeah, that's great too. Then ask questions about comments she has made, request clarification. If you do that a few times or have other colleagues do that a few times, folks will start to get it. These are all great ideas. Thank you.
And if they don't, create lines of accountability.
Yes.
Policy changes and talk to management about how meetings are conducted so that the point keeps getting missed. Since we don't have enough time to get through all of the examples, I'm going to put them up with the invitation that you screenshot them and take them back to your teams and actually use them as discussion items as a starting place to come up with a plan and an incident response protocol. So,
great, thank you, Donna.
Donna, real quick, this is Liz. One attendee was asking, do you by chance have a link to the plan that you use in the dance department?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
It's really practice for us that we make sure we're all informed of. So it's not even written down. It's our agreement in the department as organizers and leaders and saying, when this happens, these are the people that we need to all check in with each other. We decide who's going to make the first statement. We co-write public responses. We work together. But yes, we'd be happy to talk to you about what our practices are.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
You've been so generous with all of us.
Thank you everyone for these amazing questions. And Liz, thank you very, very much for keeping my awareness of the chat open since I don't have a chat window and sharing my slides. As we finish up, I'm going to share with you the words of a few amazing humans that have graced us with their knowledge. First of all, Maya Angelou. Hate, it has caused a lot of problems in the world, but it has not solved one yet. Malcolm X. I, for one, will join in with anyone. I don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth. Muhammad Ali. It isn't the mountains ahead to climb that wear you down, it's the pebble in your shoe. That it is worth taking the time to clear up the distortions, the small microaggressions, the incidences that continue to erode our evolution as a community and address them every single time, to not let them go unaddressed, and to make sure that we know that this is a long haul and there are no quick fixes. And that isn't an excuse for inaction. It means every time we have an opportunity to heal the blind spot, we keep taking action. And with that, we would love to open it up for more Q&A before we wrap up.
I just want to say, I know some of you need to go, and that's okay. Okay, so Ron has raised his hand. Let's see. We haven't used the hand raise function
You
yet.
can choose to unmute him if you want. Yeah, you can choose to unmute him or ask him to put his question in the Q&A box.
Okay, I just tried to unmute you, Ron.
It was an accident.
Okay, oh, Ronnie.
Hi, I was trying to click on the chat icon and I clicked on raise hand.
Okay, no worries.
Thanks.
So I'm watching the chat. I just see a bunch of thank yous coming in. I don't see questions, and the Q&A box is empty.
Let's see, Krista King asked a question. Can you say something like, I'd like to go back to the, oh, I'm sorry. You're right, we're caught up as far as I can.
Yeah, I think those were the input that you had requested, yeah.
Thank you everyone for your support of this series. The Ombuds Office will continue to bring you additional innovative and highly developmental series to address racism in the community and heal our blind spot. Thank you so much, Kirsi, for inviting me to be your collaborator on this series. Liz, I so appreciate everything that you have done for us to help these run smoothly. Thank you for your professionalism and your contributions as an Ombuds on this campus.
And Donna, I can't thank you enough for being willing to share your expertise, your experience, and really open heart with us and with our community in this way. It takes a lot to do that, and I appreciate that so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to do this work, and thank you for all of the care that I receive from you as my colleagues in doing the work. You will all receive a recording link.
Yes.
And you'll receive a resource page for everything that we talk about. Please continue to share your resources with us as well, and we'll continue to enrich all of our knowledge of how we move forward and create our best community. Take good care and goodbye.
Bye-bye.